welcome everybody to, I'm not sure what we're calling this. It was originally going to be an influential, or even, I think, just a Game of the Month chat about Vampire Survivors and Bullet Heavens. But, as we were talking about it, we had two more guests decide to sneak in for the discussion, which I guess is fitting, as no one thought Vampire Survivors was going to be that big of a thing about a year or a little over ago. And now it's a genre that there's already people making their own takes and trying to take stabs at the king, while that game is still being supported. So what better game to kind of ring in 2023 discussing kind of how big of an impact it has as, well, Vampire Survivors. So, joining me for our discussion, we have Joshua Reyes, Seth Goldberg, and Tomo Moriwaki. How are you guys doing, and how was your New Year's?
I'm doing excellent. Had a great New Year's. I'm ready to start it off. And like I said, Vampire Survivors is an excellent way to start the new year off because we're going to be getting a ton of clones. So might as well start now.
Wait, we're going to get them? What the hell have I been playing for the last year? What have I been looking at?
This is the peak year. This will be the peak year.
Oh, goody.
With AI generation and everything like that. Other than that,
yeah, and I knew that. I noticed that or thought that just during December. Like I saw a lot of friends over the holiday break taking Vampire Survivors for another swing. You know,
just because it just hit the phones. Like what? December, I think it just hit. They got ported to phones.
Oh, fascinating! It's a good move.
Yeah. And it's on Games Pass now, too.
Yeah, so it's like everywhere, literally. Like now it's like full, like tentacles everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
My team is, they're on to the clones, and everybody's playing all the clones. When some of my guys heard I was going on this cast, they were like, "Oh, talk about this. This one's better. This one's better." And I'm just like, "Oh, good lord."
Hey, definitely point me in the direction of these clones because it'll allow me to sort of round out my perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and I'm sure Seth and I have probably seen our fair share of them over the last 12 months.
Well, I'll get into some of that as we get further in the conversation, because I have some interesting information about some of the companies that are working on these. And I'm trying to pull up the DM conversation I had to give you the name of that game. It is
direct messages or Dungeon Master?
Both.
Why not both?
Rift Rangers.
Good both.
Rift Rangers.
Well, say that again?
Rift Rangers.
Rift Rangers. All right.
I have not even heard of that one yet.
Amazing. These games are kind of becoming a dime a dozen at this point, though. Everybody saw that Vampire Survivors, just exploded, and the clones are just all over the place.
I mean, not a lot of people know about Rift Rangers. It has 2 user reviews.
Right.
Wow.
But it's early access, and I like its sort of aesthetic.
Yep.
Well, I'll just jump into it. The Malice and Greed folks decide, they had to stop production on Malice and Greed, and they switched to a Vampire Survivors type game called Spellbook Demon Slayers, and they picked up a publisher in China. It starts with an E, but I can't remember. We're very friendly with them and talk to them all the time. They're a great publisher. And they've been pushing that, and hopefully if that does well, then Malice and Greed will continue, as far as I know. But it's interesting that that's bad on one sense. They're trying to fund one game with another game after selling it. But it's also good on the sense that maybe they came in on time for the bubble of the Vampire Survivor likes. And I think that bubble is closing quickly, and I think that the game genre itself is going to have to evolve. It's going to have to add something to the formula at this point. Mm-hmm. I have seen some interesting ones, though. Stuff integrated with idlers, what?
That just seems like a cake on top of cake at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but cake on top of cake is not a problem. It doesn't have to be, at least.
It is if you're watching your waistline.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what the price point these games are at, which is $2.99, $4.99. I think the most expensive one I've seen is $9.99. Giving them a punt and just trying them out, it's no big deal.
Oh no, I mean, I think it's easy for a certain segment of the audience to be sort of like super negative about the fast follows. But that's just a part of the industry. Like there are certain studios that are all about fast follow, and
Right.
they exist to exploit those opportunities, right? Um, and yeah, sometimes the stories don't sound great. But that said, like, you know, my perspective on it is I have no interest in ever doing a fast follow. However, these are legitimate discoveries. We learn really good stuff about how to make fun things, and having it be a part of some future project, I mean, I would not at all be surprised. And so I like the idea of being a super slow follow.
Well, you know, Apple made their bones with being a fast follow or a slow follow, where, you know, other companies would try things out and they wouldn't get involved unless it was a success and then leapfrogged them.
I mean, look at peak Blizzard. How many of Blizzard's fantastic games have come from them just following what someone else did, but doing it 10,000 times better?
You're right. You know what? We need a third category because I was thinking the slow follow, the slow, like sort of like highest polish, cleanest execution follow is definitely a stable approach for like the sort of strong old timers. More what I'm thinking is it's like what are big pieces of this structure that can then just be mixed with other structures, right? And then it feels like new things, but it's really heavily informed by these things.
Mm-hmm.
I can't shame the fast follow or the slow follow because, you know, when I did my game company, we took Mafia Wars and leapfrogged the technology and the game design that was in Mafia Wars. And, you know, so I came into the industry in 2010 seeing what all those Facebook games were doing and realizing that they had no game design behind them. And so I tried putting stuff into it. And in some sense it worked. I sold the company. But you know, I can't complain about being a fast follower.
And I think, like, to Tomo's point about just like how, I guess, like, presentable this gameplay loop is, like how quickly it can be adopted, is something that is certainly fascinating to study. Because I mean, it really feels like this kind of loop may become like the new like platformer in terms of
Right.
like that entry level. We always talk about joking. Make a Mario clone, make a Pong clone. Well, why not try making a Vampire Survivor like clone as a simple game?
Yeah, exactly. Like two excellent points there, Josh. And I'm glad you actually brought up Mario because one of the things that Mario teaches you through the level design and how you play, right? Like you learn, I call it the Mario jump, right? You learn you need to jump and you land on the enemy, right? Vampire Survivors has kind of like like almost an even simpler entry point where you simply just stand there and you're auto attacking, right? So like you're immediately already into the core gameplay loop without doing anything, but it's not an idle concept, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's taking things out of, for example, me, a person who doesn't like shmups or bullet hells or bullet curtains or anything like that. It takes it and it takes out one aspect of it, right? That's actually shooting and timing your shooting, and it changes that and wraps it differently. And I think that that's like one of the key things, like when you're studying the design of this game, that it does so very well, right? That it leads you into the gameplay like you're entrapped instantly, quicker than Mario. So I think that's one thing for sure. And then again, also to your second point, Josh, it's a really simple formula to follow, right? So again, like the modular pieces of this design are easy. You can take that and then expand on it and go from there. So this game definitely brings a lot to the table. There's like I really love how much this game. There's like a lot more aspects that this game has hit it. Like also including the price point, right? That Seth mentioned. I think Tomo mentioned that. Is that these price points are cake on cake, right? It's like you almost can't turn it down, right? And
Yeah, like again, as someone who buys a lot of games, I usually wait for games to be like in the 5.99, 9.99 range before I will bite the bullet. At 2.99, 3.99, it's like, what is that? Like the price of a candy bar, or like
yeah,
cheaper than a Starbucks.
yeah.
Vampire Survivors was not the first game in this move around and
Yes.
shoot and roguelike.
Mhm.
There was one called SXNR, SR and X,
I'm
where
thinking.
you were like a snake, like the old game Snake, where
Oh, okay.
and you moved around and there were there were things on you that you bought in the store that would auto shoot, and you were just moving. So I think that was the first one, and I wish I remembered the name of it, but it's like SNRX or SNXR. I was trying to look it up before, but failed.
The one that I always think about, the Crimson Land, is the one that I always remember as kind of like, the game from back in the day. I think it's like 20 years old at this point. Of that kind of like arcade shooter style game.
So I really like these games because I have some physical limitations lately with the nerves in my hand. And so I can't do a lot of RTSs or things that require a lot of action per minute. Plus, I'm old. My APM when I was 20 was a lot different than my APM now. So I really like these because I don't have to focus on anything but moving and avoiding or crashing if I need to. And that's really cool. And I think that's a defining factor of this genre is the auto shoot. People disagree with that and are now putting in auto shoot and manual shoot. And that's an interesting change because it caters to both sides. And I think it's brilliant from an accessibility standpoint. I don't think they did it, knowing that it would be a huge accessibility thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that point, Seth, because two of the Vampire Survivor likes that are on my list of. I have a separate award category for 2022 for Best Vampire Survivor like. 20 Minutes Till Dawn, when it was released, it had no auto fire. It was just all you had to aim and shoot. And then they added that in. I think it's now an option that you can turn on auto fire. And then conversely, you have a game like Brotato that came out with no auto fire, and then they patched in. Oh no, it came in with auto fire but no manual aim, and then they patched in manual aim to that one. And I can't play either one using those reverse. It just breaks my brain because I'm so used to either aiming in 20 or not aiming in Brotato.
Right. They're both so disconnected, and then it takes away the zen-like aspect of the game. Like Seth was mentioning, the auto fire, like it takes away one aspect of like a shmup or shooter, timing, and it allows you to focus on the game itself in a different type of way.
I mean, I think it's worth noting it doesn't take away timing. It simply defers it to your movement controls.
Exactly. Well, I meant the timing of your shooting.
Yeah.
You're also shooting and moving. So you're like, for example, if I was to say, hey, let's play a game between me and you, right? And you don't know this game yet, and I'm explaining it to you, and we have two games to choose from. One game has 20 rules. One game has one rule. Most likely, we're going to choose the game that has one rule. And so one of the things about this game is its simplicity in that way, right?
Dopamine. You're just getting dopamine after dopamine. You're getting an upgrade after an upgrade after an upgrade. The screen's exploding. You're running around. It's really an exciting game, even though you're not really making a lot of decisions. And it's all in the synergy of your weapons and your equipment.
Well,
20 Minutes Till Dawn, by the way, sold about 650,000 copies.
That's awesome.
You
you mentioned that you don't have a lot to think about, but you do. It's just it's none of the things that are connected. It's so much fewer of the things that are connected to the conventional action experience, which then opens up your point of view to then consider whether it's worth chasing that pickup. You see the guy that's going to drop the thing, and now you can focus on him, and you can try to start doing your little figure eights and take that guy down because getting that next upgrade is all that you're thinking about, right? And then you see it, and you're like, I don't want that one, and then you start avoiding it, right? Like this, it's a really sophisticated game in so many ways. The way that it kind of elegantly brings together the action as it escalates, the choices you make along the way for the weapons that you choose, that kind of the dynamic creation of your build, and discipline, right? At the end, it has to end.
Yeah.
Or you try and cheese it and prolong it as long as humanly possible. And
I wonder if they're ever going to put in, originally it was like an endless thing, but now they put in a boss. And I don't know how I feel about that.
I'll have to check it. I keep playing it on and off. Every time I do, they add 30 more achievements to it between when I play and when it gets updated. And I think to both your points about kind of this package, it has in interviews, Over said that he has a heavy background in mobile design, and you can definitely see that kind of pacing and structure, I think, of a really solid mobile game. And I think that in of itself, a lot of first-time developers, even some established ones, should really study in terms of, even if your game is on the complicated side, just getting someone to that fun ASAP. How long does it take you in Vampire Survivor to watch things melt on screen?
Right.
Maybe 40 seconds. As soon as you get that first weapon, or even your second weapon, now you have the axes shooting, and then the knives, and the garlic. And it does it all so compartmentalized, but it does it so damn well that, again, it hits that kind of perfect line of very casual engagement if you want it, or you can really start trying to get the weapon synergies. And that's another thing we really haven't seen, I think, other VS clones try to do yet, is really start, adding in the layers underneath just running around picking stuff up. And I think that is the one spot, and I'm curious what everyone else thinks, I think that's the one area where Vampire Survivor still remains the king. No one has matched a kind of chase it down yet in that regard.
Is it the king? I think there are some people that are fans of 20 minutes till dawn, or is that correct?
Yep.
I think there are people that are big fans of, what's the success metric? Are we looking at just money, or are we looking at longevity of the game? I think it's too early to tell what's going to emerge as a winner here. Vampire Survivors is good, don't get me wrong. I suck at it. I'm much better with Spellbook, Demon Slayers. For some reason, I'm better at that than I am with Vampire Survivors. Well, I don't quite understand why, though.
I would be surprised if anyone's going to beat Vampire Survivors at this point, though.
Yeah,
because it's not. The number's just too big.
We get the estimate.
It's massive, and the ROI on that game is pretty intense. I was doing a little bit of research on it, and I don't know if I got the numbers right, but I think it was about 2,000 USD spent. Yeah.
Cow.
Yeah.
Holy cow, the number
I can see some of the AAA publishers just got a chest pain when you said that. You do know we're going
scrambling to their medicine cabinet right now for today.
But that's
approximately 5 million copies.
Yeah.
Do
you look at Steam Spy when you try to figure that out?
No, we just look at the number of reviews and multiply by 30.
So theoretically, the study of that said it should be multiplied by anywhere between 30 and 70, depending on.
Right. Jake says to shoot by 30 these days.
Okay.
So that's what I've been using.
That's worthwhile.
So 5 million, somewhere between 5 million and 15 million.
Well, actually, and it's worth noting, Steam Spy puts it at 4.5 million users.
Okay.
Owners, 4.5 million owners.
And don't
Oh,
forget,
That
it's
would
now. Don't forget, it's now on Games Pass. Did it? And it's on mobile. Did it get ported to the other platforms? I don't know.
Yeah,
well, it
it's like
started
Mac.
on itch.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's starting on itch. It's on Mac. It's on Android. It's on iOS. It's on everything. Yeah.
the fact that it's mobile is really interesting because the control scheme for it is obviously great on a
Perfect
touch.
for it, right? Yeah, and the designer had a lot of background like in the casino gambling. So that
Mhm.
definitely shows there. And also a good example, like you were saying, Seth, that the juice, like all the animation and the dopamine rush that game gives you is just one of it's top notch in that regard, for sure.
He probably has background in slot
Slot machines, yeah.
Yeah.
With that, the
Because
treasure chest animation.
yeah. I mean that's awesome. I people say, "Oh, this game is horrible. It's a
No.
bad thing." I think this guy is great. I think the game is great. I
Yeah.
think this changes up the roguelite genre a lot.
Yeah.
When they
No,
say it's not a good game, though, do they
why?
have a rationale?
Why though?
Flash in the pan. All you do is move. You don't make any decisions. I mean,
So you
that's
doing
wrong.
Mario? You just moving
Yeah.
Mario?
You know how it is. People see a game getting all the press and they get really
Yeah.
because
Um,
because
I
don't
think
know.
another thing, going back to a topic, I think Tomo, you talked about how it respected, like, it ends right and it has an end, and so one of the things is like it respects the player on multiple levels, right? It respects them on there's a time limit to the game, right? You get down, there's just a session, some amount of time. It respects the player in the amount of money that you spend. And so I think in that regard, that's like something that a lot of games can take. For example, Journey, right? Journey was a short game, so people's times are limited. And I think a few of us already said, like, prior to the podcast, we were talking about like Persona and some other very long to beat games. And one of the reasons we're not getting into them is because of the massive time that's required when a game like this can be, just played in a shorter amount of time, made really well. It's a good example in so many levels to study, just from like asset usage to core gameplay loops to aesthetics. There's just a lot to study from this game, design and art wise.
I think you have a great point in the respecting your time thing and the fact that we have limited time. I wonder if the new generation or the generation now has, in their 20s, the time that I had in my 20s to play a game. I wonder if they do.
I don't think so.
But now when I go to play a game, I'm looking at my list. I really want to play a war game, but I don't have like 15 hours to put into it. I really want to play this. And then I just choose a card game, a roguelike, because I can do quick runs.
Yep. And I had a conversation with some other people. I did like a podcast for one of the websites I visit, or I write for Super Jump. We were talking about kind of like the rise of prestige games and kind of flavor or like the fluff over like the gameplay. And one of the people made a really good point that for a lot of people, like games like The Last of Us, Uncharted, like very cinematic, less gameplay heavy games, they can operate as a really good gateway drug to get someone into trying out these genres or trying out a game when they know that it's not going to be the most complicated thing, or it's not going to be something that'll take 80 to 100 hours to get through. And I think it does draw us kind of similar comparisons to what we see with like modern design, even with Vampire Survivors. This idea that you can tell someone, you get this amazing game and it is literally 30 minutes. No more, no less. As soon as it hits 0, you only have to do a damn thing. The game ends and, calculates all your rewards for you. And it's kind of, again, like drawing parallels to, like, the mobile scene. A lot of mobile games these days are designed around very short-form loops. Hey, you load up Marvel Snap. It's 5 minutes.
One of the key features in Rift Rangers, it says casual 20-minute sessions for the busy gamer. So yeah, I'd actually like if we could do a poll and find out, does the younger generation of gamers have time for like to grind an MMO endlessly for hide skins? Do they do that anymore?
WoW Classic sold a bunch, but I think it was all the
It
streamers.
was, yeah, the streamers, and then the old players that were like the previous base, but like with the new the newer players, like do they even our time? The time is different now, and then like definitely after the past time changing event that we had that altered time even more.
Mhm.
I think people's time is limited, so short games definitely are a way to go, and like not only that, but like when you think about the longevity of a studio and making shorter games and smaller games, it would allow you to release more games, right? And hone your craft better instead of like making giant, massive, huge games. And this, particularly for smaller studios, I'm referring to. But yeah, this is something that Vampire Survivors is really good at teaching.
I think you should get 5 smaller games under your belt before you attempt anything
Yeah,
on a large scale. I
definitely.
mean, it would just be insane to try to develop a large game as a solo developer in your first go around. That's
Oh, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
You just don't know. I mean, look at Gray Alien, Jake. He started with Flash games pretty much,
Hmm.
and he still did smaller games.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no. Honestly, you make something that you can't make, and it's just you slow yourself down by putting this giant mental illness event in the middle of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Ask the Libra game that I really love. That was a 15-year like solo passion project style game.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, like that is a game that you know it is like 100% indie. Like no one else would be crazy enough to make that. And again, it's trying to figure out, I guess, like where you really want to go with these designs. And like Vampire Survivors, again, like I've said this before, but it's gotten to a point where I can sometimes predict when a game is going to blow up simply by, the first 20 to 30 minutes of playing it. And like Vampire Survivors, it just like with Minecraft, it seems like that there was that period where no one ever heard of Minecraft or vampires, and now everyone has heard about those games. And like Vampire Survivors was just like at one point just as like little, hey, you seen this game on Steam? It's $2.99. You just walk around and things blow up. And look where we are in a year. Well, I think it came out in 2021, but it wrapped up in 2022. So, a little over 2 years.
Yeah, the end of 2021.
I first looked at the game, and I was like, I gave it a pass because of the price. Back when it first hit early access, and then I heard about it exploding, and I was like, wow, okay. So there's an interesting point to the price for first impressions. People may see a really low price and iffy graphics and go, this is just a junk game, an asset flip or something, and then it blows up to huge amounts. And there's a surprise. If I think they charged too low for the game, but maybe it wouldn't have sold as much as it did. I'd say it's worth $10. It's worth $15. Certainly.
Yeah.
But it might be hard for you to recognize that on the surface.
I mean, to Seth's point there, I mean, we all lived through kind of like that indie bubble bursting of like, what was like 2016 to maybe like 2018, 2019, when, it was down to like, if you sold your game for more than $5, it was considered a ripoff. And yeah, to Seth's point, that there are a lot of people who, when you show them a game, it's $1, $2, they immediately go, what's the catch? Is this a ripoff? Is this just some junk you're trying to get a quick buck out of? And it is very weird. Like, I just wonder, if Vampire Survivors came out during when the bubble was bursting, would it have sold well? Or would it just be kind of lumped in with everyone else trying to, price their games so low?
Yeah. I do feel like the tide is turning a little bit with games like Among Us and Vampire Survivors pricing. What was Among Us priced at? Wasn't it like 11 or something? Or
maybe I think it was $6.99.
It is $5 right now on Steam.
Okay. So decently priced, and I think that the I don't know, malaise of AAA, or that the disdain that people have with AAA gaming, they're looking at indies and they understand they're starting to understand more now that a lower price game does not necessarily mean lower quality. And there was that crash like around the mobile time when all the games were hitting and the cheap game meant bad game. But I think now we're starting to see the change due just to the massive amount of quality of games that are using that price range.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep.
I don't think there was any marketing really put into Vampire Survivors. It seems like it's all word of mouth marketing.
Yeah.
And podcasts and people playing it on stream and YouTube. And just people giving it a punt. And that's really interesting because there was no marketing. And this is literally the dream of any indie developer. Literally the indie dream. Right here. This Vanished, Dwarf Fortress, that's the indie dream. That's what people are chasing.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I think it's lightning in a bottle in some cases.
Yeah.
I think Vampire Survivors is one of those. Yeah, it's got great design, but there's a lot of games that have great design that don't sell well.
No, I think it's not that it has great design in that it is very well suited to selling. Right? It's not purely about its fun factor. It's that it's actually it is not, it doesn't cross the line anywhere. Right? It's actually like a series of systems that are all very elegantly and carefully arranged with each other. It's like maybe to describe it and maybe to be very flattering for it, call it like a baby version of Hades. That there are these systems, but it's not that they're big and complex. Some of them in Hades certainly are, but it's the way in which they are just so perfectly enmeshed with the other systems.
All the descriptions for the items and such was written by Jim Sterling, the critic. Very interesting character. I think he goes by Stephanie now. I probably should call him Stephanie.
I did not know that. Interesting factoid.
Yeah, and I think that was an interesting person to get to write it. And I'm wondering how that exactly came about. Because, Jim is really, Stephanie is really against asset flip games. And for a while when he was doing, the Inquisition, he was, flaming every asset flip. He was flaming acid. Asset flip game that he could. And so that kind of lends credence that it was not an acid flip. But they also didn't advertise the fact that this was Jim Sterling. Which I think is interesting. I don't know. I follow Jim, and maybe that's why I like Jim. But I'm keyed to that aspect of it. But I think
I found Jim through him flaming acid flips. Like that was my first video I saw of Jim Sterling. And another thing about acid flips, I think also that the tide is kind of turning on that also a little bit. I think that players are starting to understand, and consumers are starting to understand that it's okay. I think if you reuse an orc model, certain things getting reused. I don't think all of that is necessarily so important, and that is very evident by looking at the aesthetics of this game because they're pretty cookie cutter and it compare, and I'm sure someone else is working on one right now, and that's like super animated and it's like the most fluid pixel animation you've ever seen, but it's not going to do well. Because of course I think Vampire is just that's it, and it probably has closed. The time has closed, and then this also a side point, and then I'll a side tangent here is that I think the following that there's really no follow at all when it comes to follow-up games, because it doesn't matter if you're following a trend or not following a trend or not. As Seth said, it's sometimes just lightning in a bottle, and sometimes it's probably just more important to design the game that you're looking for. Unless, of course, you're a studio that is just, just looking to just going after trends and stuff like that. But I think that the idea that this game is following that, or this is that, every story's been told before, and it's just how you tell it, how you say it, how you package it, basically.
Yeah, that's certainly true. The early access market on Steam has indeed gotten a bit better from what it was with all these crap games. But you still see, a lot of stuff coming out that doesn't get supported or is garbage, misleading. Developers abandon it. You still see that all the time. Something like Vampire Survivors is being updated, and I think the fact that they're updating constantly is a huge selling point to people, which leads me to wonder: is the days of a game being finished actually over?
That might have been the case for a while.
Yeah. Do people demand constant updating of a game, or 3 and 4 year support cycles?
Gosh, do you demand updates for the games?
Well, change the word demand from your audience performance will improve as your frequency of touching base with them and giving them more stuff increases, right?
And I think, to Seth's point about like the updates, like it was kind of like almost like it got to the point. I think this again is another really good detail about what the developer did in terms of development. Was like every week there was some update that had like 5 to 10 more achievements and 1 to 2 new items. Like, and again, it has that kind of like drip feed effect. And again, going back to like his mobile background, I wonder how much of that was kind of, imprinted on working on mobile games. Because a lot of the best-selling mobile games, the ones I've been playing and looking at, they know you have to keep someone engaged. It's about what you have for me right now and what you have coming a week, 2 weeks, next month. Because the second you lose their interest, they're off to whatever other game they want to play. And like with Vampire Survivors, like to the point about like the early access or post-release support, I mean that is its own topic. I think that's another hour or two we can get into. And the game that I've been following, like speaking about roguelikes and roguelites, I don't know anyone else who played Revita that came out last year. It was another like 2D kind of action roguelike. Developers have been working on like a massive update to that game now for the last few months. I believe it's due out either first or second quarter of 2023, and it's basically being described as Revita 2.0. And I think that's a very interesting discussion about these kinds of games. Do we no longer treat like 1.0 as the definitive version of a game? Do we say, get to 2.0? Do we say, what is your game like in a year and a half, 2 years? Like, is that, the final version of your game?
Yeah, I think we're kind of like in the content creation era, right? So like one thing we're forgetting about here is that every time that you update the game, it feeds into the algorithm. Steam has to update it or maybe make a post or something. So like every time there's an update going on, you're bubbling it up somewhere, and so it's just keeping you in the feed instead of being forgotten. And again, like I said, like the big YouTubers, they post videos every day, right?
Yes.
Every single day. And if they don't post one, they literally think that they maybe are 6 feet under or something. Like, and so that's what people expect. So like being like exhibiting that type of creation within your game will definitely help it perform better.
We moved into a space where every indie game needs to be games as a service, and only AAA is producing these contained experiences like Uncharted or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that it's that a game like Uncharted has this existing audience, so it can succeed.
Yeah.
But that if it tried to come into that space cold, that it's at this severe disadvantage now because more and more of the audience is expecting a relationship, a longer term relationship with the product. And granted, I'm not denying the fact that there are at least several million North American users that still their normal is buy a console game, play it, and no external connection. Somehow a large number of these players don't even watch games on Twitch.
Yep.
Probably because they don't sit at computers. They don't even know what a desktop is. They got their console, they got their cell phone, and that's it.
Wow.
Just looking up a game earlier today, talking in my Discord, that was a developer who got the game to 1.0. We got it published by Devolver. And then, he didn't like the reviews. They were coming in at mixed and 65%. And maybe the sales weren't great. So he said, all right, 1.0 is done. I'm off. I'm done. Games feature complete. I don't know. And there's a large number of people that think this guy's, a shyster. But there's a large number of people that say, hey, he delivered the game. That's it. Move on with your life. Play the game.
And there's some even though I don't pursue this path, but maybe I should more. It's not working. Step away. That's totally reasonable in so many parts of the world, in so many different industries.
Yeah, and I think too, what Seth was saying earlier with like Dwarf Fortress and Vampire Survivor being like this, like, the indie dream. That there are a lot of people who feel like, I release a game, why doesn't it sell 10 million copies? It's done. I just want to make that game, retire off that one title, and that's it. But it's that issue, and to what Tomo just said, that if this game is not pulling in numbers,
right?
People I think there's I could get on this rant about games media easily with this, but there is that obsession with the underdog story. That idea that, hey, this game released and it only got, 45% on Metacritic, and then by, sheer determination and grit, now it's a 99, it's like a No Man's Sky situation. And people love those stories.
But No Man's Sky still made millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars for that team, which then allowed them to finish the story the way they wanted to.
Yeah, of course. And again, it's that issue of a lot of people don't understand kind of, the more under the surface kind of things that goes into these games. And to bring this back to Vampire Survivors, again, I've lost count how many Vampire Survivor likes I have played in the past 12 months. I at one point I got 5 different submissions from first time indie teams in a week. And a lot of these games, again, you look at them and it's just yes, it's like Vampire Survivor, but why should I play this instead of Vampire Survivor? And
if they didn't keep updating Vampire Survivors, then you have plenty of reason.
Exactly. And again, it's that same parallel to the MMO. We were talking about World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft was the king for over 15, 16 years by the sheer fact that no one could outbeat them when it came to content and quality updates. And it wasn't until Blizzard kind of did their own self-inflicted wound there, and they've lost a lot of their support, that Final Fantasy XIV is now the top-selling MMO. But again, that question is, will we see Vampire Survivor stumble? And even if it does stumble, let's say the developer in a year from now says, you know what, I put in every item I could ever imagine. There's nothing more to this game. Is it going to be hurt by that? Is someone going to write a negative review saying, oh, the developer only put 4 years into this game instead of 2. He's a shoddy developer.
Wonderbots, the streamer or the YouTuber, has been doing a series of games or a series of videos on them, and he goes through a bunch of them in a Bullet Havens video, and then he talks about Rift Rangers in another one, and he talks about Atomic Picnic appetizers. So there's at least 16 of them that he has on his channel, which is great. But yeah, these are coming out, and there are a ton of them. But I disagree with the point, the Coke theory. Why drink anything else but Coke? Because Coke's the best. Coke's the original. Nothing else. Nothing else is good. So we should all just be still playing Slay. And I disagree with that because there are other better deck builders out there. Slay was great to bring it into the public discourse, but Monster Train's frankly a better game. Indie's Live is pretty good.
I will still never stop talking about Library of Ruina and Inscription.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like all those games are very good. And they're all very sound, and they all offer really good experience. So then the question is, how do they differ? And I think they differ in sort of the power curve of the session length and how much you have to commit before you can find some of the good stuff. Like Monster Train is outstanding because you don't have to commit that much to start finding the delicious parts of it. And I think that's why it stuck to some of the people that Slay didn't. But let's say you're willing to commit the energy. I think Slay the Spire is sort of like a more sort of masterfully crafted thing, but that limits it to some extent too, because there's no, like, Monster Train's got like shoulders of the road where you can wander around and pick up stuff, sort of, if that makes any sense. Whereas
Sure.
Slay is right down its own alley. You are always on its objectives, and at least it's clear about that. But yeah, no, this is getting into a pretty high level conversation about these two games are both outstanding in their execution. Why is one so much more successful than the other?
Yeah, that's a discussion. I want to have it, but we will be super out of time if we get on that one.
That on the list.
Yeah,
for sure.
Certainly, because I'm geared for that. I mean, having been in the MMO industry right about the time that Warcraft had, there were much better games than Warcraft. But you could not compete with that juggernaut. It was impossible.
Two of my books have been about, talking about how the MMO boom and bust happened, and both books just say World of Warcraft. There's your answer right there. But I think Tomo's point about kind of like, like almost like front loading like the goodness or like having it as hidden depth. It does raise, I think, an interesting question I want to ask everyone here, and for people watching this obviously recorded in the future, I want to get your thoughts. Could a Vampire Survivor like work if it goes the complicated route? Like, imagine one that could be an hour long. Maybe it could be like as long as you want. Like, imagine one that could go 3, 4, 5 hours of play. Could that work in the sense of it, kind of bucking the traditional trend? Or would it be like one of those cases where you're getting so far off target that you're not hitting anyone with it?
I would say it wouldn't work. I think the target here is the immediate gratification, where we've become a society with no attention spans whatsoever, and we want immediate gratification. Delayed gratification is just not a thing anymore. So I think the user base for this game, there's no onboarding. It's instantaneous. It's you learn the game in seconds. You figure out. Now the complexity comes in the synergies between your abilities. That's the only complexity to the game, and even if you're bad at it, you get lots of explosions and lots of pretty lights and lots of score and lots of, so there's no downside to this game. I think if you stretch it out over time or you make it something more complicated, you branch into a different genre at that point. And I don't know if that's a successful genre, of course.
I think it brings up the important point, though, that it's good at bringing you in. It's also good at the midterm. And it's actually now starting to, it probably required the kind of sustained support, but now it's also showing us that it's also pretty good at the long term as well. Right. And that's not that doesn't have to be a trade-off. Rather, it's, of course, we are trending towards sort of like a Max Headroom Blipvert style society. People like their information fast. They like it short. They like it like a TikTok video. I get it. But still, right, holding on to people is still a thing that matters to a lot of us. And that's still old school retention, longer narratives, stuff to unlock, et cetera, et cetera.
So the DLC for this, just real quick, Legacy of the Moonspell, $2, sold 30,000 units approximately. Not nearly as good as the first one, but how easy is it to turn out DLC for this thing?
Mm-hmm. And what were you going to say, Josh?
Literally forgot.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Actually, we're gonna have to wrap this up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
But something that might have been related. Oh, now I forgot that too. Never mind.
Yeah, and I think
Love it, Seth.
I think to Seth's point there about kind of going away from what made the game work. I've played a few Vampire Survivor like clones or style games. There's a cooking one that I play that I cannot remember the name of, or like cooking theme. Here it is, Crafty Survivors. And this one
Delicious.
has like a lot more in terms of like a dodge roll. You actually have to be dodging and moving around and doing stuff like that. And I think part of the problem, besides like missing out on like that immediacy of that dopamine hit, that if you make it too complicated, you make it too fidgety to get started and having fun, it just loses the person's attention. It reminds me a lot of a lot of the roguelikes and roguelites I play where, like the first 10 minutes of the run is just horrible. You start with nothing good, it's just frustrating to play. You get that first woman upgrade, then it's, oh my god, it's great. But again, it's that kind of 10 minutes of annoyance for maybe 30 minutes of enjoyment. And to bring this back to this discussion about how quick things are moving along, it's not a good return on your time. Again, the beauty about Vampire Survivors is that it's 30 minutes, no more, no less. You can actually, now you can play 15 minutes if you turn on Turbo Mode, which is now how I play it. Which is, again, like another, brilliant idea. Are you tired of a speedy game? Here's an even speedier version of it. Go and enjoy that. But, again, I think Tomo said really well that it's a game that started out just as a short-term experience. Nothing more, it was just, here's 30 minutes, watch the pretty lights, go. Then they added in the mid experience. Now we have all these achievements. Now we have additional character unlocks and weapon unlocks. And now they've added in that idea of this late game. Now there's the tarot card system. Now we have DLC. Now you can actually plan, you can plan your build on top of planning your build. And again, it's such a brilliant game that it's going, I think, to, again, like Seth's point, and this could be something we could easily spend another hour or two on, is that what could a game do to refine that further? Because again, we can say, have fancier graphics, even more, a seizure-inducing explosions. But what else can someone go the same route as Vampire Survivors and do as well? Or will they have to go parallel? Or even, if this is Vampire Survivor, we go this way. I don't know.
I think I remember now what we were talking about, and it was if you can expand the time play of Vampire Survivors, and I believe you can. Basically, the TLDR is if you take the awesome 8 elements of Hades and put them into Vampire Survivors, then it would work.
Yeah, that would. Well, and in a weird sort of way, then I don't think anyone was thinking this when they were working on it, but Vampire Survivors, it takes just the quick pieces out of Hades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even streamlines it, right? So we have auto fire. It's like, and don't, and you can't choose it before. You have to choose it during, right? It's just speed it up. And I remember what I was going to say. Shoot, I'm in the middle of forgetting it right this second. It's that, making DLC for Vampire Survivors, I think, is very difficult. Because you need to carefully slot in the impact of these new things and these additional ways in which you can play the same game and not deny what was clean and elegantly put together, the timings of everything. And it's not just it's not a linear timing, right? It's a field of timing. My experience will have a slightly different set of timing, but it's very valid. Learning this, learning that, unlocking this, choosing this, a different player, totally different approach, their totally different path is also valid and it's fun, and I think it probably fits in the same time frames. That's extraordinarily sophisticated. Maybe it was by luck, and we'll see. I'll play the DLC, and it's like maybe it unravels a little bit because that was never the plan, and it was just too difficult.
I guess again, like I know we're coming up on time. There's like 20 different conversations I want to have with you guys. Like to the point about what does long-term support mean? Like I've seen developers, I'm sure Seth can attest to this as well, that I've seen developers who have struggled when it comes to what to do after their game is released. If you remember Battle Brothers, they fought against DLC and additional content for months, and they finally reneged on that, but I think it kind of hurt the momentum of that game. And it is that situation. I think even if you have no intention of doing a 1.5 or a 2.0 update or even DLC, I think it's still something you should consider to some extent in the back of your mind. What if, by that happenstance, that my game blows up? What happens if it does become a Vampire Survivor or Among Us? What's my plan for that? And I think, again, like to this point, we've been saying that, yes, it is that lightning in the bottle, you've won the lottery while being struck by lightning situation. But if your game does do that, a lot of developers, I think, struggle with keeping momentum when it comes to their game releases and to the quality of their games. And if you're not thinking about this kind of stuff, it will kind of slowly but surely like erode your chance of success.
I think one of Vampire Survivor's key points for its momentum, and someone brought it up earlier, is that they were doing constant updates. They were communicating with the player base. Yeah. They were really involved in the early access process with everything. And I think companies that are dark and don't have updates and don't tell their people what's going on, especially in EA, I think they're missing some momentum and some marketing that should be there.
Yeah, and again, as we're living in the content creation era, that's content for people to consume, to hear what are you working on, what's happening to the game, and it keeps you from being forgotten. So,
and just opening up a Discord is not the answer. That's maybe part of it, but I've seen a lot of Discords, that game Discords for early access where they're not really interacting with the player base.
Yeah,
it's all one-sided communication.
Honestly, unless like there's so many developers out there that probably aren't sort of avid Twitch users, and does it or they don't they don't visit the Discord channels of the games they play. It's really hard to see that, right? And then to have it explained to you and have no idea what any of it's about, that's a tough sell. You're like, wait, wait, how much time am I going to spend? And
right,
and it's just and I'm just going to talk to people that play the game. Is that really what's going to happen? Right? That's a weird. It's when you're not there. That's really weird. Once you're there, it just sounds like every day, right? It's like, oh yeah, we interface with our users, and that there's a community, and that this actual story is shared with the people that are fans of the product. Like this, that's a tomorrow idea, not a yesterday idea.
Mm-hmm. How many developers still don't do like stuff on social media? How many of them, when Twitter was actually, not imploding right now, didn't have Twitter accounts or even Facebook or not even like an easy to find email address?
I know so many devs who have studios, literally incorporated LLCs, and do you do any social media? No, I don't do any. And I'm like, I literally post a screenshot, dude. You need to post this screen. No, it's not ready to post. What do you mean it's not ready to post? So
I contact a lot of developers, and a lot of times it's really hard to get a hold of them in the indie industry, and that's just in the strategy space. But strategy space is pretty wide.
I think they'd be
strategy developers. They get excused because their legacy is even further back in the timeline.
All right, but I know we are just at an hour, and again, we can ramble about Vampire Survivor likes and indie dev for the next 5 to 10. But I know we all have to get going for this Friday evening recording. So before I let everybody go, any final thoughts? Any Vampire Survivor likes or Bullet Heaven clones you want to give a shout out to before we say goodnight?
Yeah, Seth.
I would say, give a couple of them a shot because you may find something that you like. Vampire Survivors is obviously a good choice. 20 minutes till dawn is obviously a good choice. We mentioned, oh God, the one my friend told me about. And SNXRX, I put it in the chat. Hold on. It's SNKRX. That I think was the proto version of this. And check out Wanderbots' channel for the stuff that he's putting on. Get an idea for him. I think these are great games to play in short sessions. For the $2 to $5, how can you go wrong?
So my shout out is I just looked at SNKRX. Do you guys remember a game by Nimblebit called Nimble Quest?
Oh.
It's iOS, Android. Oh no, looks like it's on Steam as well. But it's Nimblebit has these kind of cute games, a little bit kind of like Tiny Tower type of games. In fact, is that what they did? Nimblebit did Tiny Tower.
Did they? I know Tiny Tower.
Yeah, they did Tiny Tower, Pocket Planes, Pocket Trains, etc.
That's cool.
Nimble Quest is a game of Snake, where you keep adding adventures to the snake, and each of the adventures spits out different attack abilities.
That's genius.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally genius, and I don't know why it didn't take off, but that was back in 2013. And so that was my shout out.
Right on.
I see. That definitely outdates SNKRX. So
looking at the video for SNKRX totally triggered my memory.
Awesome. I might pick that up just as a punt one day.
I played a decent amount of it back then. I found it to be quite good.
Yep, and again, we need to have that conversation about why a game succeeds and why another one doesn't, because this one definitely, I think, fits that bill.
Well, I guess we could take like two games in the same genre and we could compare them.
That's interesting. Monster Train Slay the Spire.
Yeah, there you go.
If we do MMOs, that's Ramin is all over that one. When it comes to like EverQuest,
Shadowbane is the answer. It's the best. Shadowbane
my
had the best PvP.
wife is playing Final Fantasy 14 downstairs, so I'm ready for the MMO one.
I guess like shouts quickly from me again. Brotado, the game that Seth mentioned earlier, Rift Rangers. I think I may pick that one up and give that one a check. And probably the other 15 more Bullet Heavens I'll probably be playing in the next 4 months if if everything goes accordingly. But yeah, this has been a great chat. It was great hanging out with you guys. We need to get together for some of our strategy roundtables and do another general one. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. So I'll give everyone a quick chance just to, promote yourself, shout out, whatever you want. So, Josh, go right ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Joshua Reyes, and for Casual Game Studios, currently working on Samurai Pig and Rooster Rampage, so like and wish those. And also on the podcast with Josh on Saturdays, where we learn the art and science of video games, so you can check that out. And other than that, follow me on Twitter at casual_scrub, and that's about it.
All right, to Tomo.
I'm the creative director for Hyperkinetic Studios, and we have one game in Steam Early Access. It's been there a bit too long, and although it has been getting a lot of updates this year, called Epic Tavern, and you can find us at twitch.tv/Epic Tavern, and our Discord channel, discord.gg/Epic Tavern.
All right, and Seth.
Hey, I'm Seth Goldberg. My claim to fame is working on MMOs and starting my own studio, doing weird Facebook and gambling games. So right now I'm doing the Strategy Informer project, which is game reviews, trying to surface the good stuff out there. We just started bringing stuff onto our YouTube channel. The link will be below in our links. So we'd love to see you on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe.
All right. And for me, again, you're probably watching this on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. Check out all my books on design. You can follow me on Twitter, Patreon, Discord, all that over on the right. And yeah, we will be getting together for more discussions and so on in the future. Probably not as many Vampire Survivor related ones, but who knows? But, gentlemen, it was a pleasure hanging out with you this evening. And for everyone watching, thanks again. And come back for the discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until our next talk, have a great night.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.